You could have started it.
Oh, whatever.
Okay, so we are now on.
We are?
We are, but you know what?
We are.
You go ahead and say hi, because I got to turn the lights on.
I did turn the lights on.
No, but you didn't turn this special.
Oh, these lights? Well, we did.
Yeah.
Somebody stole the.
I know, but I figured out how to do it.
Oh, okay. Now we look brighter.
We do. Yes,
Hello.
actually, you can see that my entire body hangs off my cheekbones.
Allow me to introduce ourselves.
As you get older, it's all about bone
Oh,
structure.
yes. Well, or, some people, it's like the triple cast. Right? Like that.
The makeup woman, Sharon, that I worked with back at WPIX, she would always say to me, "Would you please hold still so I can get rid of at least one of your chins?" But she could do that, okay?
Yeah.
Because you have there are sacred relationships in your life. One of them is with the makeup person,
right.
and the other one is with your colorist.
Your colorist.
Yes, you know, the one that makes dyes your hair white.
Oh.
Your colorist.
See, my colorist I haven't yet employed or whatever, but
we're
late in the ball game for that. Allow me to introduce ourselves.
Please.
This is Joe, and I'm Joe.
And this is the Joe and Joe Weather Show.
And in about 10 days, we'll be Joe and Joe, the unemployed meteorologist.
True, but that doesn't mean that we won't still be here.
Right.
I will be here. This is.
You're going to be coming here every night?
No, I'll be on my YouTube channel.
Oh, okay.
I've kind of, by the way, I have said that many times, regardless of what's going on with respect to the TV side of what I do, which is ending. None of this is ending, okay? The YouTube channel, the websites, the app, everything else.
For you.
No, but
for me, I don't want it to end for
the
another
TV
another
part
few more
is
years.
ending with
the
it.
TV part.
Yeah.
And you know what's getting increasingly frustrating, Joe, is that now you have seen my dossier.
Yes.
You've seen my portfolio. It's about like that, and I've mailed it out to a number of different broadcasting outlets or whatever. And do you realize not a single one has not even asked for an interview?
And
it's amazing. I guess
you're interviewing them.
When
yes.
you see, well,
exactly.
When you see that the person who they're interviewing or prospectively are going to interview has graduated from college like 4 decades ago, and that these people who are going to interview you are about 20 years your junior, I guess they become intimidated.
I mean, you've diapered kids older than the ones that are getting jobs.
I have shoes in my closet older.
I know. Look, you and I could get into a long philosophical conversation about this, but why don't we do that after next Friday, just in case?
Right.
Okay.
I'm still holding out hope that somebody throws me a bone. Throw me a bone, somebody.
Now,
let me just at least put my foot in the door. You could slam it on my foot. But let me at least get the foot in the position before. There's nothing. It's unbelievable.
you have to be close with, like, you know how close I am with some of these.
Yes. Yes.
The relationships that I have.
Right. Well,
yes.
Why don't you talk to some of your relations and say, hey,
I haven't talked. Don't want to talk to me.
I don't want to talk to you either.
Don't want to talk to me.
You realize 80 years between the two of us here. 80.
The problem is they realize also it's 80 years between the two of us. But like I said, you know what? There is actually a very solid conversation that can be had about the state of the industry that you and I somewhat function in. But I think it's probably better for both of us, specifically you, to wait until afterward, okay? So everybody's anxious about the weather. So let me just say a couple of things. The snowplow guys that I work with, and there are a number of them.
Right.
And they were the best bunch of guys, okay?
We're going to give them a standing ovation.
A couple of them in particular, Adam, for example. I will protect his last name for the moment.
Okay.
But Adam just can't wait to get some snow on the ground so that he can go out and do what he has to do.
Right.
Brian, on the other hand, he wants it not to snow because he still has sprinklers that he has to finish blowing out.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing this from all ends, but they are a great bunch of guys, and they're sensing that their time is coming here with the winter. And I have to tell you, from what as far as the weather systems that we've been watching, no real change in how reviewing things as far as this first weather system for tomorrow, such as it is. It looked underwhelming from the get-go, and it looks underwhelming tonight. Would you not agree?
I would agree 100%. This is, we get a little bit of rain or shower activity tomorrow afternoon, and then it's just a matter of the cold air getting in here too late.
Right.
It might arrive just in time to change over the last few raindrops to snowflakes, but if you're waiting, to plow something or to shovel away something, or if you kids who are watching are thinking, oh, the schools are going to be delayed on Friday morning, or maybe even closed, forget it. It's not happening with this go-around. Next week might be another possibility.
Now that one,
but we're not going to talk about that in the.
But we are going to talk about it. But
Right.
that one, I'm actually growing more bullish on.
Bullish.
Bullish, yes.
Okay, Taurus.
Yeah, I'm growing more bullish on the prospects that we could wind up with a general accumulating snow out of it. Okay.
What is going on?
No, I'm just trying to get.
Is that a commercial on your site or whatever?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's a commercial on the live stream.
okay.
Some people are seeing it and some people aren't,
All right.
because that's how it works.
I have to tell you, in looking about next week, I think quite frankly, this might turn out to be one of those scenarios where, kind of similar to tomorrow,
Right.
But except that next week we might actually get something before it all shuts down.
Well,
But-
yeah, actually, it's very similar when you look at it because we talked about these types of cases where you have cold air coming east, you've got a wave coming up, and 9 times out of 10 for us, it winds up that the wave goes by, takes all the
drags in the
precip,
cold.
then the cold air comes in.
Right.
In this particular instance for next week, might be one of those instances, one of those 1 in 10 instances, where cold air gets in here first, and then the wave comes up. And if that happens, that'll be the way that you'll wind up putting down and accumulating snow. Well, let me bring up a couple of maps and get started, because the folks on the board are just itching to see the forecast accumulating snow that is being indicated by said weather service. So hang on, I'm just doing a little
Okay.
bit of maneuvering
All
here.
right. Maneuver.
Yes. Okay. So they can see that these are Weather Service forecast snowfalls, and this is also this covers the whole event. So I have it set to Saturday morning, so it'll catch every last flurry all the way up into Maine, and even up in Maine and in areas to the north. It looks like, except for some local areas, some local effect that occurs, this looks like a 1 to 3, 2 to 4 at most snowfall from northwest PA through upstate New York, and clearly, I think, out of our zone.
Right. I think the storm really, as I mentioned yesterday, does not really start winding up until about Friday morning, and even by then it's up in the Gulf of Maine. So folks up in Maine may get a few quick inches out of this, but places south and west, and that includes our area, really, it's going to be a matter of just watching as a few snowflakes perhaps appear as the cold air begins to penetrate at the tail end of the storm, which will probably be sometime late on Thursday night.
Yeah, David McCain is. Yeah, David. David wants to know about Youngstown, Ohio, for next week.
Is this the guy who wanted to know about the severe weather?
Severe weather for next week. Youngstown. David's an aspiring youngster. Well, we'll call him a youngster. For us, everybody's a youngster. But he is he's moving his way through high school and getting ready.
He would have loved January 25th, 1978, the storm that fell in between the two big storms we had in New York. That was the storm with, what was it, 868?
Right, the Cleveland blizzard.
The Cleveland blizzard.
Yeah,
He
that
would have
fell
loved that.
in between. Right, it fell in between the January 20th and the blizzard of
February 5th.
78.
Yeah.
Or he might have even liked, because he probably wasn't around for the Cleveland blizzard in '96.
Right.
There was another one
Right.
after that. Yeah, so he missed them both. Sorry, David, but there'll be some generational event in your lifetime. I promise you.
This is a little bit of a sad note. A couple of weeks ago, we lost one of the really fine people in weather, a longtime weather observer in the Hudson Valley, Dr. Jerome Thaler, and he observed the weather. He took daily observations in Yorktown Heights for 50 years. He won the Thomas Jefferson Award from the National Weather Service for all of his years of taking records. I went to the wake, which was up in Yorktown Heights. Came across paths with his son, who is now the person who was taking the records in lieu of his father. His father retired. The son took over and is now taking the weather records. And I said, I have a feeling that this winter of 2019-2020, we're going to see something that we have never seen before in our lifetime and in the modern history of weather. And I said to him, I said, and you just know that when this event, whatever it is, happens, we're going to be thinking, it's too bad that Jerry or your dad is not here to see this. And so if there's something extraordinary that happens, I'm going to blame it on Dr. Jerry, not blame it, but I'm going to say it's because Dr. Jerry Thaler wasn't here to observe it. So maybe you'll get your wish in Ohio. Maybe you'll see something that's like
that you never saw before. Folks, by the way, I can actually read the chat. I have you guys up on the chat board on the phone now, so you can go ahead and ask questions. I'm actually going to look at the chat and get the maps up going at the same time. We've got the surface map up tonight, and of course, Joe, we're setting up here for this next system for tomorrow. The high is moving out. If you look back over in through Montana and moving into the Dakotas, and this is a cold air mass. We've got temperatures, teens, single digits coming out of Canada. These are afternoon temperatures because this is the 18Z map. Let me put the 21Z and get the latest. But you've got this nice big high coming down. This is a solid push of cold air. And I think that's the bigger story here, I think, with respect to Friday and into Saturday, is that this is our coldest shot of air for the season so far.
Right. And you know what? It actually, I think about people who live in the Plain States or, like the Dakotas or Montana or whatever, and they're not really meteorologically inclined, or they don't have that much sense of weather changing over even a short term. Just a couple of weeks ago, the Climate Prediction Center came out with their winter forecast, and they said for this particular region that we're looking at right now, it's going to be above normal. Above normal temperatures, warmer than normal temperatures for the upcoming winter season. And somebody in this region right now who's experiencing what is happening with these frigid temperatures, probably saying to themselves, and they said it was going to be a warm winter. It's not even winter yet, and it looks like it's going to be. And what is? It's only November. What's it going to be like in January? What are those? Blah blah blah. That kind of thing. And it's you don't base everything on just one single weather pattern that may span a few days. I mean, this is
right.
It's not even the winter yet, but it is kind of amazing to see just how frigid this air mass is for so early in the season. You pointed out yesterday, we were talking about like places out there already have had like 4 significant snowfalls.
Yeah.
They even had the significant snowfall in Montana in September, for God's sake.
Well, this is, by the way, this is a negative East Pacific Oscillation in action, the EPO. This is what happens when the EPO goes strongly negative, which is what we're in now, is that it favors cold air spreading out across the continental United States. And if the troughs and ridges are in the right or wrong spot, well, then depending on what your perspective is, then you get that cold air to the east. They certainly will be in their respective spots to produce that cold air going into Friday into Saturday, and then with another surge that's coming, setting the table up for maybe something happening on Tuesday. So just looking at the loop, Joe, you've got, we actually have been working out a split flow here. And one of the things with a split flow is when you're dealing with one stream of energy, it's fine. You're looking at that one particular stream.
Right.
You follow the weather systems along, and so on. But when you have a split flow, it really becomes a bit more problematic, because you have to kind of wait for the system that's coming in the bottom part of the split to come out. And sometimes you could have multiple energy here, but now we're finally seeing the southern part of the split come out. The short wave that was back in California, in Southern California, now in Arizona, and moving eastward. So that's carrying this area of warm air and tropical moisture eastward. And meanwhile, on the northern part of the split, you see the flow from that coming down, and that is bringing in the cold air. The problem, well, as we said, this stuff comes up, is going to get in here tomorrow, but it runs out ahead of the cold air, which is coming down out of the northern jet, and by the time the cold air gets here, we just miss it. The timing's off.
The teleconnection occurs too far to the north and east of the tri-state area. For all of you who are wishing and hoping for snow, that is the simple case. That we don't get if I may use the term, the injection of atmospheric steroids into that lower system, that lower split flow, until afterwards, and that's just the story. Sometimes it happens before it gets to us, and then the snow lovers are like a fly landing on a piece of candy,
and we should mention
rubbing their legs or whatever.
Right. Nice visual, Mr. Mayo. And sometimes it can happen the other way, where your cold air comes in too soon and overwhelms everything, and your precip gets suppressed well to the south. So you folks watching from Jess Harden from Alabama, for example, those are those situations where maybe you wind up with a little bit of snow. So let's move forward and take a look at the radar, which right now is producing. You can see the two splits in action. The showers and even a couple of thunderstorms showing up in parts of Texas. We actually have, I think SPC has a slight risk of severe weather here. I'll double check that in a moment. You've got some showers in western Tennessee and into western Kentucky, and this is a narrow band of snow from northern Ohio across Wisconsin and into Michigan, and then coming on the other side, on the Canadian side near
Northern
Toronto.
Michigan.
Yes, from northern Michigan.
You said
What is it?
Ohio.
Did I say Ohio? I'm sorry. I meant Michigan. I'm going to be 61.
The LP of Michigan.
The LP, the Lower Peninsula,
yes.
as opposed to the UP,
Right.
which is the Upper Peninsula.
Well, we all do that.
God, you're so bad. Listen, folks, you're watching and you're listening. Okay, we did not stage that. That was totally unexpected. Okay, totally unexpected, but not a shock, is it? All right. So let's roll with what's happening. I could, I just a whole bunch of jokes just popped into my head. I'm just going to leave it alone. All right. So here's our weather front that moves in for tomorrow, and as we said, Joe, the front comes through. The cold air tries to get in here, and it really does not succeed. I'm going to switch to the radar view. I always forget to do that. If it will let me, yes, it will. So rather than see the measurable rain, we'll see what the GFS thinks the radar is supposed to look like.
The
So,
18Z
yeah,
GFS. Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
So it goes on through, and you see that area of snow on the GFS is not really overly impressive. The NAM has a bit more to it, but either way, it doesn't matter. By the time we get to midnight, it's just about over with, or shortly after, from west to east. And then, of course, it goes out, and now we bring in the cold air for Friday and Saturday. It's a pretty decent cold air mass that's coming in here. When I say decent, I mean well below average.
Yeah. High pressure, very large. And, as it gets to the eastern seaboard, you can see how it begins to spread out a bit and weaken a little bit, but still even on into Sunday. Now, Sunday, it's interesting. The really bitter day out of this is going to be Friday, as the cold air and the gusty winds take hold. Saturday will be about as cold as Friday will be, but it will not be as harsh, because with the center of high pressure moving right along the eastern seaboard, we won't have very much in the way of wind, so it won't be as harsh. It'll be cold, but not as harsh. And then very quickly, as that high builds offshore, we get the return flow. And temperatures on Sunday could be a good 10 degrees warmer.
Oh, we're going to
as opposed
bounce
to Saturday.
Sunday.
Yeah.
Now, the next Arctic boundary, this is Monday morning on the new GFS. And the next boundary, the next front, is at this point, I'm going to do it in blue. So here's our next front by Monday morning. And you can see that in this particular instance, Joe, So the front looks like it's really getting here. You've got cold air, this next high coming down into Montana and the Dakotas. Cold air is spreading east across the lakes, and your wave action is still pretty far back here. So this certainly looks like it wants to, at least on this particular run anyway, it brings that front through, and it doesn't get all that far south, but now here comes the wave, and this is where the GFS, a couple of things that it did today with this, it looks like it's got double waves, which you and I both know seldom happen.
Right.
So I'm going to expect to see some adjustment here, but it would imply that we would get some snow here
Monday night
into Tuesday, and then that goes out, and then there's a second wave that brings snow to the coast late Tuesday night, Wednesday. And as I said, double waves are rare, but I just think in general, in terms of the overall appearance here, that we are probably looking for our neck of the woods. I think the more I'm looking at this on every day, and the European was not that different really. We might be setting up for something. So I'm a little more bullish with regards to some snow at some point early next week. And also, by the way, this system coming out brings some solid rains through Texas and through the Gulf states and into the southeastern part of the U.S. And there's your second wave that it forms in the Northeast Gulf. Now, that's on this run. Now, how it ultimately plays, I don't know. But, it certainly does make for, a pretty interesting situation. And you got the high up to the north, good solid north-northeast flow. That's cold air.
Right.
That's very cold air at low levels.
Yes. The question is, yesterday, the GFS was kind of wishy-washy with this, and the European and the Canadian models were going whole and hearty that we're going to have a massive, or at least a very significant snow event. And now we just have the reverse. We have now the GFS with this double wave action,
right,
suggesting that we're going to have some significant snows here early next week. And both the European and the GFS and the Canadian models are still suggesting a coastal system, but not as dynamic as what they had yesterday. And in fact, it looks like now they're starting to wind this thing up. The European doesn't seem like it's going to start winding this thing up until after it's east of Cape Cod. We may get some snow out of this, or it might actually end up being, Joe, in my opinion, maybe rain changing to sleet, changing to snow on Tuesday.
Oh, that could be. It could work out. It could very well work out that way as well. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that the evolutionary process of what the models go through as they do their they dance around with all sorts of different solutions. We talked about yesterday how we're going to watch to see if something was to dig south. Well, on the late sequence of runs, it seems to be less the case. It looks like there's another short wave that's behind it. One of the things that I like to do is to run the maps backwards, because oftentimes it's good to see where your system is coming from. So if you run it backwards, and I'm using the hemispheric here, so I'm at the end of next week. And you can watch, that's probably going to be what you're seeing here. This is for Tuesday, Wednesday.
Right.
Okay. But you can see where that comes from. When you back it all the way up, you can follow its origins almost back up to Siberia there.
Right.
To northern Russia. And then it comes down, crosses through the Arctic, and then amplifies in that big vortex that's set up. But my point in all of this is the fact that we have this firmly established flow that if you just kind of connect the dots here in terms of the way where it steps up in the jet stream, our air is coming down from up across the Arctic regions and going right into the southeast. This is also the other thing I'm looking at, Joe, that's very interesting is the fact that unlike last winter when we were setting up with this sort of
the fire
hose jet, it's no fire hose this year so far in November. You've got cutoffs across the Pacific. You've got this big one that is out south of the Aleutians with that trough to 160. That is, when you've got a trough at 160, that puts your ridge up along the west coast at about roughly 120, and puts your trough in the eastern part of the United States somewhere.
Right.
So the interesting question to me is whether we're going to hold on to this in general going into December. Is this flow pattern going to get even stronger, or are we going to see, this last for a little while? Maybe it goes to about the middle of the month, and then we get, some kind of rotation of some kind to something else. I don't know.
Yeah.
It does look pretty potent to me when you look and you see all those cutoffs running around. It's going to be awfully hard to get those to break down now that they've established themselves.
Well, we had a very chilly November last year, at least in our part of the country. Then all of a sudden, December warmed up. It was one of the warmest Decembers in the eastern United States in a good number of years. Then we were continued warm into January. Then all of a sudden, the mercury dropped out of the thermometer at the end of January, and we turned back to a very cold weather pattern for February into early March. So it's very hard to maintain one particular pattern for an entire winter. So this pattern that we're looking at right now, as cold as it may look, it may very well drop out of sight when we get into December, or it may be maintained for a while into December. We mentioned, was it about, not yesterday, but maybe a week or so ago, we were talking about the winter of '89, where it was so bitterly cold in December, and everybody was saying, "Oh my goodness, is this how it's going to be for the rest of the winter season?" And all of a sudden, in January, boom, it flipped right over into an abnormally mild weather pattern and stayed that way through the rest of the winter. So you just don't know how these flows are going to hold.
You don't. And with respect to this system for early next week, one of the things that's changed is the fact that when you look at the upper trough, if you think back to a couple of days ago where it was just kind of plunging that whole trough down in the Ohio Valley and making for a wrapped up cutoff low, it's much more open and progressive. I got to get to the right calendar date. So here we go for Friday, Saturday. Of course, our system goes by. Now you see this arm comes down, and it's trying to get to this sort of cutoff, trying to do that. It's stretching out. But the problem is that there's another short wave right behind it. If the model's correct about this, and we don't necessarily know that it is. These things, whoops, that wasn't supposed to happen. Sorry about that. Sometimes I lose control of the mouse.
It's too positively tilted.
Yes.
If you want a big storm, this is when it's like when you think of a pendulum and the pendulum is tilted more to the left. We call that a positively tilted scenario or a trough.
Right.
And as you can see, that's exactly what this is portraying. Whereas, as you were pointing out a couple of days ago, this was more neutral.
Or even if we go back to yesterday, I'll go back to the European from yesterday, for example. Hang on, I gotta gain control of myself here. So let's go back to and this is the European from today, by the way, which, it goes neutral on the European, but the trough is already on the coast.
Right.
So that's not good for snow lovers. That would put all the development further out. You see how Joe's pointing out of the fact that northeast southwest tilt to the system, and then it goes north south when it's on the coast. When we looked back just from yesterday, this is what it had yesterday with this wrapped up upper low diving southeastward.
Yeah, that's dangerous.
Yeah,
that's.
And look, there's nothing to say that we
can't come back to that.
Yes, and there's still plenty. We're going to be dancing around with this in terms of the models at least through Saturday and possibly even into Sunday before it finally settles down into what's going to happen. So I would just warn everybody to look for more volatility in the model runs overnight. Here's the Icon model, which Izzy mentioned earlier. I've been paying more attention to the Icon, Joe, because I've noticed that the Icon and the European, while not identical, they do tend to mirror each other to a certain extent. And since the Icon comes out earlier, I was trying to use it to trying to gauge
to anticipate what the European was going to come up with.
And in this particular instance, now this is the late afternoon run, so it doesn't go out far enough. But it does show at least a fairly strong shortwave coming down into the northern plains. But on the day run, it actually did, on the day run, try to go back to this cutoff idea in the east. It actually has a very vigorous upper low. And as Joe brought up before about the tilt, I mean, this tilt here would be perfect. Right along 80, and then the arm just sort of swings around. I mean, that whole jet, that bright orange and red jet, the whole jet just digs down and around. This is a very dynamic looking upper air. So it's on the, I think it's on this table of possibilities. You got a spread in terms of what may or may not happen, and I think they're still all in that range. A lot is going to depend on what happens upstream with systems out in the Pacific that are going to impact how these troughs behave here in the eastern part of the United States.
You think 50 years from now, obviously we will not be here, but 50 years from now, everybody, all the meteorologists and operational forecasters will be looking at just one singular model, and that somebody will, that the professors or the adjuncts will be saying, well, a half a century ago, they were looking at not just one, they were looking at 4, 5, 6 different models from 6 different places on the Earth, and one was always conflicting with the other, whatever. Would it be great to have a universal model, that one singular thing that, okay, here it is, this is what's going to happen, instead of having all of this mixed up bad. Somebody is messaging you, or
Yeah, no, I was speaking in acronyms, and they didn't understand what I was.
Does anybody look at the UK Met anymore? I know that.
Well,
that's one model that I don't think it's on Tropical Tidbits.
It's not, because we're not. They get upset if you show it without permission.
Oh,
but you know what? We can talk about it, and we can do that. So. Look, the bottom line is the jury is obviously still out for whatever's going to happen early next week, and the jury has come back with regards to later tomorrow and tomorrow night, and you're not going to. I doubt we'll see any surprises from that. Oh, you know what? There was one thing I wanted to show you, which I thought was interesting. So you know how we're both of us are fans of WPC and their forecast. Well, I pulled up. This is their forecast for days 6 and 7, which is starting from next Monday night and going through next Wednesday night.
Okay.
So this is for the system with regards to the Tuesday Wednesday system, and well, if you want to believe it, I mean they're showing the dark blue is half an inch of liquid back to the New Jersey Pennsylvania line, running down into eastern North Carolina, and the first shade of lighter blue there is between 3/4 of an inch to an inch, and you even have a little pockets of an inch to an inch and a quarter over Long Island and southern New England. So, without reading their discussion, I don't know what their logic is, but at the very least, they're telling you that they're expecting something to happen here.
Right.
So I thought that was and then if you go on WPC's website, you can see this stuff. These maps, that they're broken down into, not only plus the first 3 days, the first 5 and the first 7, but they have days 1 and 2, days 2 and 3, and so on. So you can subtract that out when you're trying to figure it out on a map. By the way, as far as SPC is concerned for tonight, just really fast. So this is their risk area tonight, which is a small area of slight risk in North Texas, and that marginal risk that just kind of looks like. I don't know, it looks like a side of a plane, or your thumb, with your finger pointed straight, running up from West Texas and New Mexico and on into parts of Oklahoma, and even general thunderstorms into southern Illinois.
It looks like the underside of the space shuttle.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yes. All right, so let's bring this here. There was something I wanted to do, and now I forgot.
One thing about this map, well, you just said it's like day 6 and 7, but you can see that in this by day 6 and 7, there's a large area. Most of the central and western part of the country is like in the dry zone. So.
Right. So just to see if there's any. Oh no! Now I remember what I wanted to say. So you were talking about going to one model, okay?
Yes.
And then remind me, because I'm going to pull up talk about the UCBED, so we might as well take a look at it. See, I don't think that day will ever come, because the nature of human ingenuity is such that someone is going to come up with the single model, and there will be somebody out there that will say, "I can beat that.
I can beat that. I can improve."
And there will always, I think, there will always be that motivation in the human spirit to try to top. What was it? Deep Thunder. From
Deep Thunder,
Deep Thunder.
From WSI.
and as
right?
many people have called it, deep blunder. So, you know, there's always going to be there's always going to be somebody there to try to take something and improve on it, and that's a good thing. Okay, it might be a bit messy.
It was so much easier though 40 years ago when all you had was the LFM and the
Yeah, but don't you
the,
remember how we were always craving for more?
the Bustotropic?
Yeah, but when it was only out to 48 hours,
Right.
and then it went out to
Oh,
60, we
yeah.
leaped for joy to get those. And but I honestly have always said, though, I think it made us better forecasters because we had to think. We didn't have right. We had to use we had to look at everything and use our imaginations and use our brains and trying to figure out. Okay, where are we going in the long range? What's going to happen day 5, 6, and 7? And there was so much volatility in the long range
Right.
in those forecasts in those days, which we don't really have as much now.
Well, we had the DIFAX model, and that would provide us with, as I mentioned last night, the 84-hour upper air.
Right.
And we would draw on that where we thought the surface features were. And we'd say, oh, it would be so wonderful to have something even beyond 84 hours. And actually, I think the National Weather Service, the folks down in Washington, D.C., did have access to models that went beyond that. I remember once in an impending snow situation, one of the, I think it was Junker was the name of the forecaster.
Right.
And he wrote on the discussion.
Oh, they kept him
imagine
secret
this-
in those
He
days.
said snow geese will probably be honking at the 96 hour. and I'm saying to myself, let me see it. Where's the 96? I want to see the 96. And now, of course, we just arbitrarily look, and you got stuff out to 364 hours.
Well, just
Not funny
looking at the UCMET, by the way, it would suggest that Arctic boundary, that the first wave goes up to our west, and then we may have to wait for the second wave. So that's why I was saying you have to be cautious when you look at these things with the double waves, because they don't always play out. But that's the UCMET. It doesn't mean that it's right.
It only goes out here to 144.
Right. So this is 12Z on Tuesday. So this is next Tuesday morning.
Right. That seems to look very much like more of a rain pattern initially, because we're
Well, at least with the first wave, and it might, and it could very well be double waves. You know, particularly if you wind up getting the big high plunging straight south, which on the UCMET model is down in Kansas somewhere. So,
Right.
but that's the best we can do, folks, is to just kind of talk about it because, well, actually, it was up there in the corner, but you couldn't see it because it was so small. Well, maybe the UCMET people won't notice. Someone asked before about your feelings about the Farmer's Almanac, and
there are two Farmer's Almanac
Right.
for here. There's the old Farmer's Almanac, and actually, I think one of the one that's done for the old Farmer's Almanac, one of the meteorologists at AccuWeather, I wish I could remember his name, because he's not they actually make reference to him. And then the old Farmer's Almanac, the other Farmer's Almanac, the one that was published started getting published about 20 years after the old Farmer's Almanac. One was in 1796, the other started in 1818, and they've been going at it ever since. And the Farmer's Almanac uses sunspots and
right,
lunar cycles and whatever.
but not loony cycles.
Not
just-
loony cycles, no.
Let's see. Izzy D says, I wonder if warm air will come in. I imagine that's what you meant, from off the ocean, because many times when you have big storms, the warm air overwhelms where you are in Lakewood in New Jersey near the coast, referring to the next potential system. Well, look, you clearly have to get that frontal boundary to go by, Izzy, by the way. That has to go first. So you get the frontal boundary to go by. That's pretty cold air with that high. So once you get the wind shift, you'll be shocked at how cold the bottom part of the atmosphere might get. Even though the upper layers may not cool off as quickly,
Right.
I think that's what you may see with something like this. And you could wind up maybe with a band where you get sleet for a period of time. But
Right.
we still have to work out. We still have to really figure out just exactly how it's going to set up. And remember, as I said earlier, I think the upper air, with regards to the final outcome, is still in flux. So just bear that in mind. Jess Harden for snow in Alabama. I think James Spahn, who's great. I don't know.
It was great.
He's
I know.
great.
I know. He's from Birmingham,
I
Alabama.
think he said something
On TV.
about maybe seeing some snow down there.
James
He's-
Spahn is like a legend in Alabama. He's been on television down there for many, many years. Had a chance to briefly meet him at a conference in Birmingham back about 15 years ago.
Nice. So you met all these people. You go to all these conferences, and I never
Well, it's a
did
reason
go.
for me going to these conferences. I have the NWA seal of approval, and there are a variety of different ways that you can maintain that seal. But every 3 years, you have to do something. You have to, and they say you could either go to spend time at a National Weather Service office, which doesn't make any sense for me,
Right.
and doing other things, community service. But the one thing that will get you the seal to be recertified for another 3 years is to go to one of the NWA conferences, and that's why every 3 years I have to go to one next year if I want to hold on to my seal. But then maybe by this time next year it might be a moot point.
Yeah. William Uber said, by the way, that come Saturday morning we could have temperatures below freezing, reports of temperatures below freezing in every single state in the U.S.
Well,
Which,
that would-
which I guess for this time of year might still be a little bit on the
Mauna Loa and
unusual
Mauna
side.
Kea in Hawaii, I'm sure at the top where
Right.
the observatories are at 13,000 feet, they'll be below freezing. And
Well, let me just take a look. I want to just take a look at Florida, I guess. Hang on one second. I just want to see the GFS. Will put the temperatures up here. In
well,
the
if you're talking
southeast.
about a state temperature or whatever, obviously, Tallahassee and Jacksonville, they'll be below freezing.
Well, look at these temperatures, by the way, next week. I don't know if Robert Sabatino was on, but I mean, they have temperatures. The GFS on the Icon next Wednesday with that cold air. You're just looking at teens in all of Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, the southeast part of the state in the low 20s, and you've got temperatures in the teens and low 20s. Now, this is next Tuesday night into Wednesday, which would make sense. But let me just back up. I don't think you're going to have. Well, let's see what this first shot. No, it doesn't look like, for Friday night, Saturday morning, you're not going to have 30s going all the way down. But, early next week when that next big high comes down, that's brutal air for this time of year.
Yeah.
To see, I bet you're going to, those numbers those have to be they got to be records there, I would think. I wonder if there might even be some all-time records. I got to go do a little digging. That's a very, very cold push for November 13th to
And
go all the way far south.
You'll probably see on Florida television next Tuesday or Wednesday. That'll be the lead story, and you'll be talking about kids, being bundled up on their way to school. Dangerous weather for the kids tomorrow morning on their way to the bus stop. And what's the temperature? Like 40 degrees?
Right. So Timothy Veltman said James Spahn said that flurries will be showing up on models, and crap weather apps will pick up on it. He's got a point there, but nothing meaningful at this time for Alabama from the cold air. Okay, yeah, they won't. You can't put the tweet link, but yeah, so that's James Spahn, Spann. Well, I'm sure Jess Harden knows Mr. Spahn from the legend that he is in the great state of Alabama. But he's right about crap apps too, and not mine. Mine is not. But seriously, Joe, this brings up one point with regards to apps, and I think it needs to be said because you know what drives me crazy? I'll tell you what drives me crazy. I didn't even give me a chance to answer. What drives me crazy is that somebody will ask me, what's the weather going to be like for for whatever day, and then they'll say, I'll give them an answer. Well, my app is saying, and they'll pull up the app. They'll pull the app, and the icon, the time, the icon, and the temperature, and of course now, because of the time of year we're at, I'm getting messages. Well, my app says that 6 days from now we're going to have heavy snow, and 33, right. Or 9 days from now, or 15 days from now. Okay, let me make this clear if I haven't already. All right, here's the thing about apps: the weather part, those icons, and all you see, unless it's from the National Weather Service's forecast, which is what you find on my app if you go to the icon section with current conditions and local forecasts. Okay, but for a lot of these other apps, be it the Weather Channel, AccuWeather, and a few others, those are weather model based apps. Right. So if 6 hours from now, the GFS, when it comes out, has no snow, you're going to pull up the app and it's going to go from saying heavy snow for that day to mostly sunny for that day. And then maybe 6 hours after that, right, it'll have a rainstorm in 60. So that's what you're seeing there. You're seeing there's no human input in those forecasts that you see with regards to those icons. You're seeing what the models are putting out.
And it's very volatile. I mean, things can change, as you just alluded to. When I was at News 12 Westchester, and News 12 Westchester proudly, I think to this very day, promotes their app, their weather app. But Suzanne Colucci, who I used to work with on the 10 o'clock nighttime evening newscast, I would do a forecast. She'd look at the 7-day that I put up, and then after we went into commercial, she said, "Joe, I got a question. Why is that you're saying this, but my weather app, which shows me the News 12 app, is saying something completely different?" And I said, "Well, because this forecast on that we showed
has a human in it.
We humanize that. This is coming from both the machine, but also from a real live person. Whereas what you're getting is just a machine that's going, and pulling out numbers and pulling out icon." Well, they shouldn't really do that. I said, "You want to go to the corporate people who
yes.
are so proud that you want to tell them that this is not right or whatever it is?"
Lisa Nieves is a big fan of ours, by the way, and she says that we're the best in New York, and that she loves us. And thank you very much.
I'll drink to that.
We won't argue. David McLean, cut it out, okay? Because there are moderators on this board. I want a tornado for Youngstown, Ohio. I want the SPC to put a high risk for severe weather. Maybe it will happen on my birthday, which is January 7th. All right, seriously, knock it off, okay? That's not the kind of thing that you want, and that's just silly. And just leave it be. Okay. I've yelled at my first teenager on my channel. Just running through here.
I have to, but honestly, Joe, I have to say...
No, Timothy, I'm glad I did the rant about the apps. I've been meaning to do that for quite a while.
I mentioned this to the weather crew here at FiOS 1 earlier today. I'll mention it now here, that when I was when I was really getting into weather, when I was not like a teenager or whatever, I used to enjoy when we had a prospective snowfall or a big snowstorm or a possible blizzard or something like that. I'd jump up and down and I'd be off the walls. And my mom, who's still with us, said to me, "I hope that when you get to be a certain age, you're going to learn that weather conditions like what we're anticipating with the snow or the snowstorms or the cold, it's right. Not anything to be happy about. This is going to be..."
Well, we learned when we started having to drive it.
But she put the Malocchio on the curse, so to speak. And now all
That's
of these
a type
years
of
later,
pasta, in case you don't know.
all of these years later, I say to my mother sometimes that you were absolutely right, because it's no fun, especially when you have to go to work and it's 5 inches of snow on your driveway.
It's torture.
Like that. Torture.
I mean, I didn't mind doing it so much when I had my 4-wheel drive truck. And when I had my other 2 vehicles before that, which were 4-wheel drive, I have a 2003 Toyota with 290,000 miles on it, and like the tires are about this wide. Right. So I don't want to do it anymore. I've already taken my life into my own hands several times. I'm just not doing it.
I just had my SUV inspected, and the guy behind the counter says, "I'm going to give you a break." He said, "I'm going to give you a break. I just want to tell you," and he said, "You know better than anybody else. He said, when it starts really snowing, you're going to have to change those tires. You got 3 months to, I'll give you 3 more months with these tires, but they got to go by the time we get to January or whatever." You think that's fun, having to pay for 4 tires or whatever? That's lousy.
I got mine at Costco.
Yeah. Or BJ's.
I go to Costco because then they do the rotations afterward, and
right.
You can
balance the tires.
You can do your shopping while you're doing. Scott Briller sent me. Did you get the article? I sent you that article, the link to that article last night,
which is
on Facebook. The storm from like 1980 or 81 that missed New York.
Oh yeah, December of 1981. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, so you did get it?
I didn't see it.
Yeah, I sent it to you on Facebook. I sent it on Messenger.
Oh, well, I'll have to look back then. I'm sorry, I was doing other
Oh,
things
that's
there.
all right. No. So he'll get
No,
to it.
I
But I
remember-
see, I did send it, just so you know.
I remember that. It was a Friday, before the storm. It came on a weekend. It came on a Saturday. And I'm telling everybody in Providence, Rhode Island, don't worry about it. It's going to be out to sea. There's nothing going to be, no problem. I think, and like Saturday night late, it's like S plus. It's like snowing like 3 inches an hour in Providence. I was like dying.
That's the worst feeling in the world. There's two terrible feelings. I think I don't know about you. Which is worse, do you think? When you forecast it and it doesn't happen, or if you don't forecast it and it does happen? Snow.
Now, if you forecast something and it doesn't happen, like an impending storm, and you
Yeah.
out a storm and then
I mean,
it
what-
doesn't happen.
what-
I mean, if you
Which
miss
is
the
worse
timing-
for you emotionally?
Well, emotionally, I'd say if I said, "Don't worry about it. Nothing's going to happen," and then something happens. That's horrible. That's
Yeah. So if you say something's going to happen and it doesn't, you're okay with that.
yeah, because people out there saying, "Well, thank goodness he was wrong," because I don't want to.
He's always well. They'll take it even a step further and say, "Well, he's always wrong
He's
anyway."
always wrong.
Actually, by the way, Johnny Quest had asked me to take a look at this. That's why I brought this map up. There's a typhoon in the Pacific. This is Wednesday, Thursday. I think the pressure got down to 898 the other day. And sometimes these typhoons, when they recurve,
The game changers, you mean? Or?
well, or the ones that recurve east of Japan usually reinforce the low that's in the Gulf of Alaska, and it looks like this one kind of does. If you follow it along, it's not completely clear cut because it looks like the model's got all these wrapped up lows around. But if I'm following what I think is the continuity here, it goes up into the Bering Sea, and then it's still. So you got these other systems that are dropping down. As long as it keeps the trough near Hawaii and you've got this split flow, at least for now, it makes for interesting times ahead, in my view.
Right.
I'm just seeing if there's any other additional. Timothy says he prefers the surprise element. Okay, no,
He's talking about a Gomer Pyle.
right, golly.
Rich Von Olin, who was at News 12 Traffic and Weather, and I've worked with him for many, many years. We had more than our fair share of surprises, and every time we got surprised, I'd always bring up I'd always send him a picture of the late Jim Neighbors, dressed as Gomer Pyle with that look on his face like, surprise, surprise, surprise. I don't want any more surprises in my life.
No, we've had enough. Just think maybe it's time we can say goodbye. You know, it's. I
think so. We've been going
that's
for
a good thing.
56 minutes?
Yeah, so it's good. And
as my wife would say, nobody would sit and watch you two for 55 minutes or whatever.
well, clearly
Well, guess
she's
what? We have
wrong.
119 people are watching.
Well, that was down from 135,
Oh,
140, so that
right.
was good too.
Well, it's coming up on 8 o'clock, Joe. People
All right, so
wanna start watching their-
watch other stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so Weather in 5 tomorrow. Usually I have that done by about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning. So look for that. If you've got the meteorologist Joe Chaffee weather app, you can watch it on the app, like you can watch the live stream on this app. In fact, I just remembered I was supposed to send a notification out to app holders so they wanted to join the live stream, and I forgot. This is the second time this week that I did that. So now you're going to watch it on the replay.
Right.
But if you haven't downloaded the free app, do so. Google Play or the App Store, meteorologist Joe Chaffee. And the other one is Angry Ben's app, the Angry Weatherman. So just in case if one is not working, you can always jump on the other.
Is there ever going to be a time when he's not angry?
Well, he's angry in a good way. It's
All right.
it's like positive anger.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So we'll be back tomorrow. We'll see what the models are doing with regards to tomorrow night's event, and we'll move forward from there. Okay.
I don't know any place I'd rather be at 7 o'clock tomorrow night
All right.
than right here.
See you tomorrow.
You, my buddy.
Yes. It's friendship, just a perfect blendship. When other friendships have been forgot, ours will still be hot.
Da 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 da.
Hip, hip, hip. Good night.